Well, let's continue on this now. Student beneficiaries of the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, will soon embark on a national shutdown, as we've heard in that report, halting operations at universities across the country over the delayed payments of allowances. Now, let's discuss this further. We're now joined by student activist Keamogetswe Masike. Keamogetswe, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Just talk to us a little bit more about this national shutdown that is planned. I mean, as you've been listening to that clip, we also understand, of course, that over and above the payment delays at institutions, we understand that several students will be without accommodation soon due to these late payments.
Oh, well, look, we've decided, actually we've taken a decision that there's no Minister of Education in this country. The minister that we have is currently implicated of corruption, the maladministration and the collapse of NSFAS. As we speak, our students in their absolute majority are starving. NSFAS has not dispersed their allowances for April and no one is held accountable for that. So we've taken a decision as student leaders across this country that it can't be business as usual when the minister wants to blue tick some of these issues that student leaders and students in general are raising across. So we will be embarking on a national protest that seeks to get the attention of the minister. But most importantly, we want the board of NSFAS to be dissolved, because in the latest statement that was released yesterday, we've realized that the current chairperson who was found in a restaurant eating steak, discussing that he has influence in some of the processes at NSFAS, is still a board member. So we want the dissolvement of the board, of the entire board. We want an independent administrator to oversee the executive roles that are at NSFAS, because it can't be business as usual.
Just on that note, in as far as the statement is concerned, I mean, part of the statement reads that, and it suggests that the institutions, including TVET colleges, have failed to meet their registration upload period of, 2024 academic year. They've listed about 10 institutions that did not form part of the April file. But this is, of course, a systemic problem. I mean, it didn't just start overnight with NSFAS. Where do you think the problem lies in as far as understanding that we see these problems year in and year out? All right, I think we have lost our guest there, Keamogetswe Masike, a student activist there, of course, monitoring developments as they are threatening to embark on a nationwide strike following problems with the NSFAS system. All right, so let's continue with our earlier conversation that we were having following the student beneficiaries of the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, soon to embark on a nationwide strike, halting operations at universities across the country over the delayed payments of allowances. We continue to be in conversation with student activist Keamogetswe Masike. Thank you so much for joining us again. Let's continue then our conversation. I mean, you mentioned earlier on a recent statement that was released by NSFAS, which seemed to suggest that the institutions, including TVET colleges, failed to meet their registration upload period of the 2024 academic year, which is why you're now seeing these delays. I mean, they've listed about 10 institutions that did not form a part of their April file. Do you think that this seems to be a lacking of understanding from NSFAS's part in terms of these issues that are happening now? These are systemic problems. They did not start overnight.
Yeah. Look, it's none of our business that people are sleeping in their offices. I think these latest developments have revealed that officials, both NSFAS officials and university officials, are sleeping in their offices, and students are compromised in the process. But I think we must not deflect from the concerns that we've raised, that we had mentioned that there were fly-by-night companies that were appointed by NSFAS. The Vekemans law firm came later with the report that recommended that the companies that were appointed by NSFAS, contracts must be terminated. The revelations again came out that the CEO, Mr. Andile Nongongo, participated in the handpicking of these companies. The chairperson who was found in a restaurant asserting that he has powers over some decisions that are taken at NSFAS revealed that there is corruption. So we had mentioned categorically clear that we want the total termination of this contract. So it's none of our business that people are sleeping in their offices. Unfortunately, it gets to compromise our students because there is a working relationship that we can't deny between institutions and NSFAS. And of course, that then says that universities are then also have to be held accountable for the delay of some of the data files that were not sent to NSFAS on time. But I think we must also condemn universities for behaving like nightclubs because, from time to time, universities want, to behave like centers of commodity at the expense of an education of a black child. Because now these are institutions that want to be they want to show that no, I want to disperse your allowances if you don't give me my money. So unfortunately, universities now have become centers of commodity, and students get to be compromised. The academic year, as we speak, is in a peak. Students are supposed to return back from home, from their villages, from their townships, to come and write exams, and unfortunately, because of the late delay in terms of payments, students are still home, and universities have resorted to online learning, which I can also assert that lecturers are finding it difficult to conduct online classes because students are saying that it can't be correct that officials want us to participate in classrooms and yet we have not received our allowances. And it's also disappointing, I must also mention in the statement that there's no way in the statement where it indicates that indeed NSFAS takes full responsibility for the delay of these payments, and unfortunately it's just people blaming each other. This one is blaming this one, the other is blaming the other. So unfortunately that tells us that indeed we must embark in the picket lines, and it can't be business as usual.
And in fact, to that last point that you are making, in fact, in this statement that I have, NSFAS does say that these institutions are the ones that are causing their reputational risk. But I want to visit something that Professor Bismarck Keamogetswe also said, earlier on in a clip that we've played. He raises a point that has already been brought up before, which highlights the risk associated with having one financial aid scheme, that funds most of the tertiary students in the public institutions in the country. As you, of course, call for the disbandment of the NSFAS board and the dismissal of the minister that is responsible for this. I mean, what are your thoughts in terms of how we can start dealing with these systemic issues? Because we are here every year in the beginning of the year dealing with these matters, but they don't seem to be rectified or going away.
The problem is corruption. The problem is corruption in this country, and unfortunately, government, the current administration is not acting on the matter. And unfortunately, we were having a discussion with my colleagues that Blade Nzimande is going to get arrested. His time is coming. Because the delay in terms of decisions that must be taken, in terms of making sure that there's stability in the sector, depicts a picture that indeed he's also implicated in some of the shenanigans that are happening at NSFAS. And look, it's unfortunate that we've written to all public institutions that we thought that, had or have capacity rather to assist us. I mean, we've written to the public protector outlining some of these concerns. We've written to the portfolio committee on higher education outlining some of these issues. We've even went to an extent of opening a case of corruption against NSFAS at the Pretoria Central Police Station. But to our surprise, nothing has been happening. And we've also hoped that the current acting board chairperson was appointed by Blade and Nzimande. We know that they are friends. They have a historic relationship or friendship. And unfortunately, those are some of the things that are causing a stagnancy in some of the higher education sector. And unfortunately, the poor of the poor, and I mean, these are the students that depend on this money, to have access to accommodation. These are the students that depend on this money to have a meal allowance, to buy essentials on a daily basis to survive. And unfortunately, many of them are at the verge of even, dropping out, because we get these DMs, we get some of these inboxes that I'm in the verge of, dropping out because number one, I'm defunded. Second to that, I'm not getting any form of allowance that can assist me to have a better life in an institution of higher learning. So we're going to embark on a national protest to declare war against the Minister of Higher Education, who is non-existent. We don't have a Minister of Higher Education in this country, and we say that without any fear of contradiction. Students in their absolute majority are home hungry and have not received their allowances. Many have received their allowances, money has disappeared in their accounts. We have fly-by-night companies that have been handpicked by the CEO and his friends and the minister, and nothing has been happening. The Vacaments report came out clearly recommended that there must be a total termination of these contracts. Nothing has been happening. Instead, we have a spokesperson, a national spokesperson who likes misleading the nation. He speaks fluent English in such platforms, misleading the nation. Telling us about litigation processes that are taking time. But we fail to understand that, but the board took a resolution that indeed there will be a termination of Izaga, Noraku, Co-Invest, and Tenet as service providers. But up till to date, nothing has been happening. Our students are charged exorbitant fees, charges, levies in some of these fly-by-night and dodgy banks that they are subjected to. So this is not really a direct payment. This is a via payment that maybe perhaps the retirement package of the minister, because we know that the minister is not returning this year. But we will be embarking in that protest. We are very angry. Our students are hungry, and it can't be business as usual.
All right, Keamogetswe, thank you so much for that. Of course, Keamogetswe Masike is a student activist there. This is following that threat by students to embark on that nationwide shutdown. Of course, at the back of NSFAS allowances through service providers whose service contracts were found to have been invalid. Of course, that is part of what the students would be protesting against, over and above the fact that non-payments continue unabated at various institutions as well as accommodation.